Hi guys, so I'm here today to talk to you about series that I need to finish. I've never really thought of myself as somebody who predominantly reads series. I'd say I probably read more standalone books than I do books in series. However, I have noticed recently that I'm actually in the process of reading quite a few series. Some I've been reading for quite some time, some of which I've started this year. And I would really like to get around to finishing a few of those so that I'm not in the middle of as many series as I am. So I thought I would do a video to create accountability and talk to you about the series that I have already started, that I have read one or two or perhaps more books in, but have yet to finish. And you could tell me which ones you think I should continue on with first and sort of prioritise. So without further ado, let's get into the books. So the first series that I am in the process of reading, that I started this year, is a series that starts with The Diviners by Libba Bray. So The Diviners is the first in the series and is the only one I've read so far. I believe 3 are currently out, but there's perhaps more coming out. It's more than a trilogy, at least, so I still have quite a lot of this series to read, but I very much enjoyed the first one. When I read Libba Bray's other series, it starts with The Great and Terrible Beauty, I actually binged the entire trilogy in the space of a couple of months. I could not put it down. Whereas I haven't actually picked up the sequel to The Diviners, despite how much I enjoyed it since reading the book, and I really need to get back into it because I think it's a series I could very much enjoy and I'd really like to know what happens next for the characters. This one is set in 1920s New York and follows a cast of different characters. It's a multiple perspective story, which I have to say, although I love The Diviners, I didn't love it as much as the Great and Terrible Beauty books because I think I do generally prefer books that are from one perspective. But this is a multiple perspective story with loads of fantastic characters, all of whom have a special paranormal, magical, fantastical gift. So Evie, one of our main characters, can read the past of objects through touching them or find out about their previous owner through touching them. And when she moves to New York in this 1920s setting, there have been a string of paranormal ritual killings that she kind of gets involved with the uncovering of, and it's a really great book and there's so much more to come. I can tell so many more exciting things to happen for these characters as their lives intersect and we learn a little bit more about who they are and why they have these abilities. So I'm looking forward to this series. I just need to pick up the second one. I then have a series where I've actually read 2 out of 3 of the books, so I'm less shameful, and that is the Barrytown Trilogy by Roddy Doyle. And each of these books can also be considered standalone in this series, so as opposed to really following a linear set of events that goes over the course of 3 books, they're just all about one member of the same family. So the first book is The Commitments, which has also been converted into a film and a stage show, so it's probably the most famous one. And it's about a group of teenage guys in Ireland in the 80s setting up a soul music band, and I've read that, really enjoyed it. I've also read The Van, which is about one of the characters from The Commitments' fathers starting up a chippy on wheels with his pal. Neither of them have jobs at the moment, so they manage to use some money to do up an old van and turn it into a chip shop on wheels. And they're both great books, really funny, but also kind of look at ordinary working class life in the 1980s in Ireland. And the one I haven't read, which is technically in between those two, is about the sister and the daughter of the other 2 characters, and it's called The Snapper, and it's about her having a baby. So I would really like to get around to that because I think these are really fantastic books. I love Roddy Doyle as a writer, and I'd like to have read the package. I also need to continue on with the series that there are so many books in, and this is the Parasol Protectorate series. And not only are there tons of books in this series, which is by Gail Carriger, there are also series that shoot off from this series about characters related to the main character of the Parasol Protectorate series. So it's a large world full of lots of books that I need to get into, and I've read the first 2 in the Parasol Protectorate series. These books are set in the 1800s in the UK. However, it's in 1800s with a slight difference in that werewolves and vampires exist and everyone knows they exist. They have a part in society and people are entirely aware of their existence. Our main character, Miss Tara Botti, is also a preternatural, which is a much rarer supernatural kind of ability where she can actually remove the supernatural or paranormal from other people, so she can like exorcise ghosts, or if she touches a werewolf they're temporarily a human, same with vampires, etc, etc. And it's just about her like life living in this 1800s. She's a well-to-do young woman but a little bit strange and odd, and her interactions with the paranormal world, and they're quite funny, fun, fast-paced books. There's some romance in there, really unique and clever, and I do want to read more of these books and also start the other series in this series, really. So I need to get on to book 3, really. This is also a series where I don't have the third one, either an audiobook or a physical book, whereas with the Barrytown Trilogy and the Diviners I have the next books that I haven't read, which is the same with the Sofia Can duology actually. So Sofia Can Is Not Obliged is a sort of Bridget Jones' Pride and Prejudice retelling, except it's about a young Muslim woman working in publishing who's writing a book about Muslim dating, and it's all about her romantic life. And I read the first book in the series, or I listened to an audiobook and loved it, and I actually do have the sequel, I just haven't gotten around to picking it up yet. And it's sort of just about what happens after the events of the first book. I can't spoil the first book for you because it would be massive spoilers, but yeah, it's just about sort of the next step in her life, and I own that one, so I really should get around to it soon. What I don't own, however, but really want to pick up soon is the sequel to Shadowfell by Juliette Marillier. So this is another series with quite a few books in it, so number 2 will not be getting me to the end of that series, but will be taking me on my way. This is a high fantasy series set in a sort of medieval-esque Scotland type setting, and in this sort of kingdom magic is prohibited. Only people very close to the king and the king himself can use magic, so those who are touched by the fae or have magical abilities are sort of hunted down, and our protagonist is of course touched by the fae, and she has the ability to see the fae even when they're hiding and communicate with them, and she's trying to flee the authorities and find the rebellion who are sort of building themselves up to go against the king and his kingdom. And you know I love Juliette Marillier. I've read 4.5 of her books. I'm in the process of reading another one right now, and I would really like to read the sequel to the story, find out what's next for our characters. There's so much more to come. It's a series that very much does not wrap up in any way in an individual book, whereas some of Juliette Marillier's other books are quite contained even though they're part of series. So if I want to know what happens next, I really need to pick up the sequel. On that topic, I am reading another series by Juliette Marillier, although this one's slightly different. It is a 6-book series, however each book again follows a different member of the Seven Waters family. It's the Seven Waters series, so I feel like there's less pressure to read them all really quickly because you don't need to have read the next one to get the satisfaction of like a well-rounded ending, which you do get at the end of each book, and I'm currently in the middle of book 3, but these are actually some of my favourite books of all time, so I want to keep reading them, I want to consume them all, but at the same time I don't want to have read them all because I want there still to be some waiting for me. So I'm enjoying book 3 just now, which is called Child of the Prophecy. The first book in the series is called Daughter of the Forest, and I'm going to continue enjoying it and find out what happens to the main character in this book, but then I might give it a little bit before I pick up the 4th one just to stretch it out a little bit, which is sort of similar to how I feel about Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. So this is a series of books by Terry Pratchett, all set on the Discworld, which is like the most insane series. So there's 40 odd books in this series, all set on this planet of Terry Pratchett's own making, and there are kind of series within this series, so you do not need to read these books in publication order, and in fact I have an entire video dedicated to where to start with Terry Pratchett's Discworld, giving you some advice and explaining a little bit more about how the world works. But there are some standalone books set on this planet as well as some series set on this planet, so I have read more than half of the books set on the Discworld, probably around 30, so I'm getting close to having read them all, but at the same time it kind of scares me that I will have read them all and there will be no more Terry Pratchett Discworld books for me, which makes me nervous, but at the same time I want to keep reading them. So I do tend to reread them quite a lot, the ones I have read, and every now and then pick up a new one. I just recently read Monstrous Regiment. I'm planning on reading Moving Pictures soon because I just downloaded the audiobook of that one. However, I'm taking it slowly because I kind of don't want it all to be over. There are 2 more series I want to mention, however, and the first one is the Temeraire or His Majesty's Dragons series by Naomi Novik. So I read the first book in this series earlier this year, and it turns out this is like a 13 book long series. So I have a long way to go in order to finish this series, but it is a dragon series. It's a fantasy series set during the Napoleonic Wars in a sort of alternative history where there are elements of magic in society, in particular dragons. So dragons are beasts, have always existed, cohabiting alongside humans, and they are used as part of the sort of infantry in the war between the different countries during the Napoleonic War. So we follow a British Navy man who at the beginning of the book ends up with a dragon's egg, and because this dragon imprints on him, he goes off to join the aviation force, who are the people that fly on the backs of dragons and use dragons to fight in the war. And it's such a unique, fun concept. You'd be surprised how many dragon books are set in the 1800s though. I did a whole video about it. And I would really like to see what is next for these characters, and a friend of mine actually has offered to lend me the sequel, so that's really handy. And I'm looking forward to continuing on with that series, but I'm sure it'll be a while before I actually finish it given how many are on it. And lastly, the series I most recently started began with A Catawitch by Nnedi Okorafor. So I didn't realise this, but I actually think these 2 books, A Catawitch and A Cata Warrior, which is a sequel, go by different names or were originally published under different names. But I think they're quite commonly known as A Catawitch and A Cata Warrior now, and those are the editions that I've been reading, and I just finished the first one. Absolutely loved it. I love Nnedi Okorafor. She has quickly become one of my favourite science fiction and fantasy authors. And A Catawitch is a fantasy book set in Nigeria, and we follow Sunny, who is a 13-year-old Nigerian girl, but who spent the first 9 years of her life in America, so she's Nigerian American. She's from the Igbo people of Nigeria, and she's also albino. However, on top of that, she discovers at the beginning of A Catawitch that she's also a witch. Now, the witches are actually called leopard people in the series, but you get my meaning. She has magical blood in her veins and can work magic, or juju, and it's about her learning her craft. And there's also a bit of a mystery going on in the background because there is a serial killer out there killing children in a ritualistic manner. There's something quite reminiscent of the Diviners actually in that, and I think if you enjoy the Diviners you would enjoy A Catawitch and vice versa. But I really want to get to A Cata Warrior soon. I'm definitely going to read the sequel to that book this year, because I find with Nnedi Okorafor's writing that I generally just want to binge it. So I am looking forward to reading the sequel to that. Now, there are a few other books I have read the first in the series, however the sequels are not out. So I'm not going to mention them here because I have no control yet of when I can read the sequels to these stories, and I've also got to keep this video in somewhat like watchable length, right? But I would love to know what your thoughts are on any of these books or series. If you've read any of them, how do they progress, which ones do you think I should prioritise and set time aside for in particular. I'd also love to know what series you're currently reading and enjoying. Is there any series that you have been reading for a long time over the course of some years now? Please do leave your comments down below. But until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye!